Because we are so much stronger than those who hurt us. And I'm so much stronger than those who hurt me.
Bravo!
Tonight, a Saddle Lake Cree Nation woman is recognized with a Polytechnique Award.
They took the gold out of the ground and gave us nothing. Now they will put the arsenic back into the ground and give us nothing.
And the Yellowknives Dene First Nation renew their calls for compensation over the giant mine. Good evening, welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. We begin tonight in Ottawa, where earlier today the federal government tabled new legislation on the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Bill C-15 is titled the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. The government says if passed, the bill would affirm the declaration as a universal human rights tool and create a framework to implement it in Canada. Elders and leaders joined federal ministers in Ottawa today to make the announcement.
This framework will put into place new requirements for the government to work in consultation and cooperation with Indigenous peoples, to align federal laws with the human rights standards set out in the Declaration, to develop an action plan to help achieve the objectives of the Declaration, and to report annually on our progress to Parliament.
For more on this, you can visit aptnnews.ca and more on the ongoing efforts to implement the UN Declaration in Canada. A mother in British Columbia says her daughter was recently given a school assignment that is causing outrage and shock among the Indigenous community. Tina House has that story.
Schools. Can you name 5 positive things about Nazis and the concentration camps? Can you name 5 positive things about slavery? This is not okay.
Krista McInnes posted that video to TikTok after her daughter brought home this school assignment.
When she told me we're supposed to write down 5 positive stories or facts about residential schools, I was baffled. I thought maybe she read it wrong. Like, this can't be real. So my immediate reaction was I just kind of snatched the paper out of her hands. And then when I saw it with my own eyes, I began to uncontrollably shake.
The school district in Abbotsford told McInnes the assignment was not approved by the board, but the teacher used their own discretion to hand it out to the 6th grade class at William A. Fraser Middle School. Angela White works with the Indian Residential School Survivor Society.
I think what is really required from the school now at this point is to not just have that brushing it off like it was a mistake, that they really do need to extend a hand to go through some ceremony with the local First Nations, with the family, with local First Nation organizations, and make a true apology.
Krista, who's Cree and Ojibwe, originally from Winnipeg, says the legacy of residential schools still exists today, and none of it is positive.
This was an invasion of culture. This was an invasion in its entirety. It was an invasion. It was a stripping of human rights. It was a stripping of culture. We've lost languages that will never be spoken again.
Angela asked a few survivors of what they thought of the school assignment.
The one survivor, she began crying the moment that I started speaking with her, and you can hear the emotion in her voice saying, I have no good memories. I have to still apologize to my children for the way that I and my husband behaved. I then talked to another survivor, and all he said to me is the only good thing I can think of is if we burned it down. There are no good memories when it comes to Indian residential school.
As for Krista, the whole experience has been difficult on her and her family. An elder, Sadie McPhee, has come to do a brushing off ceremony to help her heal. The school superintendent has apologized, but Krista wants to see action rather than just words. Tina House, APTN National News, Abbotsford.
Polytechnique Montreal, the university at the center of the infamous Montreal massacre 31 years ago, awards an annual scholarship to a female engineering student in honor of the 14 women murdered that day. This year, the recipient is Cree. Lindsay Richardson has more.
Without further ado, I have the great pleasure of announcing this year's Order of the White Rose Scholarship winner, Brielle Thorson, currently studying at Queen's University. Bravo!
Brielle Shanae Thorson is the recipient of a $30,000 scholarship for women studying engineering. She hails from Saddle Lake Cree Nation in Alberta and is the first Indigenous woman recognized by the Order of the White Rose.
Our winner this year stands out, not only for her academic and technical achievements, but also for her social commitment, which greatly impressed the jury.
Brielle's resume goes on and on. She worked in robotics for the Canadian government. She's a varsity rower and even competed in the Canada Summer Games. She was the first Canadian representative at the American Indian Science and Engineering Society and is a committed volunteer and community activist. The White Rose Scholarship was created 6 years ago in tribute to the 14 women shot and killed in the 1989 Montreal massacre at Polytechnique. Last year, to mark the event's 30th anniversary, Montreal officially qualified the attack as anti-feminist. Nathalie Provost is a Polytechnique survivor. She was shot 4 times. During Thursday's ceremony, she offered a message to Brielle in Cree.
I think this would mean I humbly offer you my hope and my faith in you.
While accepting the scholarship in front of her university's own White Rose Monument, Brielle explained she too experienced on-campus violence.
2 days before I started university in my first year, I was sexually assaulted in my dorm room. I learned firsthand how institutions continue to uphold systems that prioritize the well-being and futures of perpetrators and abusers instead of valuing the futures and well-being of survivors and victims.
She urges other women, other survivors, to press on, even when faced with adversity.
Because we are so much stronger than those who hurt us, and I'm so much stronger than those who hurt me.
Brielle's predecessors can clearly see the trail she's blazing.
In you, women engineers and Indigenous peers in the science have found a remarkable ambassador. Well done, Brielle. My heartiest congratulations to you.
Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Montreal.
Congratulations indeed. Time to step aside for a quick break. Coming up, stewards of the land.
All we're trying to do is preserve something for the future generations.
Welcome back. The cleanup of Giant Mine, the Northwest Territory's biggest environmental disaster, is scheduled to begin soon. But the Yellowknives Dene First Nation are sending a strong message to Ottawa that the federal government's actions to make good on the mine are still failing Indigenous people. Charlotte Moore Jacobs has that story.
The Yellowknives Dene First Nation are on a healing journey.
Thank you.
And have been ever since their unceded land was contaminated by arsenic from the giant gold mine. But as cleanup is set to begin in 2022, there's still much unfinished business.
They took the gold out of the ground and gave us nothing. Now they will put the arsenic back into the ground and give us nothing. What new monster might they unleash on us now?
Elders, leaders, and community members gathered this week to renew their calls for a formal apology and compensation from the Canadian government over what they call the giant mine monster.
Many elders who lived through the early years of Giant, who saw their way of life drastically changed, passed away without receiving any acknowledgement from Canada that they had longed for.
Giant Mine began operations in 1948, and in its gold processing, highly toxic arsenic trioxide settled on the traditional lands of the Yellowknives Dene. Despite Canada's knowledge of the deadly emissions, equipments to control pollution were not installed until 1951, after many Yellowknives Dene reported illness and a 2-year-old boy died from contaminated snow.
It still haunts our communities in the social effects that spiraled out from this poisoning of our lands. Food insecurity, displacement, intergenerational poverty, loss of meaning, despair, misery, alcoholism, homelessness, suicide. This is Giant Mine's toxic legacy.
There's unfortunately no mention.
YKDFN leaders are also concerned that contracts for the federally led remediation will be awarded to Southern companies, and more should and could be done to ensure Indigenous economic benefit.
We call on the Government of Canada to come to the table to ensure that many decades of this toxic legacy, the Yellowknives Dene people will benefit from the cleanup of this land.
APTN reached out to Crown Indigenous Northern Affairs, who are in charge of the cleanup, but we were told no one was available and that they would respond at a later time. Then again, the fight to righting the wrongs in the biggest environmental disaster in the history of the Yellowknives Dene is not going away anytime soon. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife, Chief Dry Geese Territory.
Still in the north, earlier this summer, the federal government committed $600,000 for a third round of its environmental guardianship program. The money is for Indigenous communities to monitor and protect the environment as they see fit. APTN's Sarah Connors was at one community to see how a guardian there is helping safeguard the land.
If you see a bunch of ravens, I usually stop and go investigate why they're all there.
Joe Bruno is patrolling Kluwani First Nation territory in southwestern Yukon. As an environmental guardian, it's his job to collect information on the health of the land. His main task is to monitor the highway and question any hunters he sees along the way.
So it's to kind of keep an eye on the game and see if it's declining or it's up.
Bruno is one of 3 guardians for Kluwani First Nation. Their jobs are part of a 3-year federal pilot program to fund 10 Indigenous guardian projects across Canada. While guardians can't enforce laws or write tickets, they are responsible for educating anyone entering the territory about sensitive habitats and wildlife, along with the regulations designed to protect them.
I'm just an information booth, but a mobile one though.
Bruno is also responsible for recording game like moose and salmon, which have been scarce in recent years.
We used to get salmon up here quite a bit, and I think this year they said they counted 40.
We lost over 8 feet of water here in our lake.
Chief Bob Dixon says another task topping the Guardian's to-do list is monitoring climate change, like this lake that dropped several feet in the last few years and is making life more difficult for the First Nation.
We have to travel outside of our community now to harvest, to get back to our moose hunting, our traditional gatherings.
It's the ravens along the highway.
There will be one more year of the guardianship program. After that, the government will decide if it will commit to a long-term program with more resources. Bruno is hopeful positions like his will be added to more communities and says he's proof that the program can be successful.
All we're trying to do is preserve something for the future generations.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Burwash Landing.
I want to go for a car ride with Joe Bruno. Well, it's no secret that Canada's child welfare system is in a state of crisis, or that it's Indigenous children that are paying the highest price. Tomorrow night on APTN Investigates, journalists Colin Crozier and Kenneth Jackson look into the tragic deaths of 3 sisters with ties to a First Nations child welfare agency in northwestern Ontario. Here's a preview of the death report, part 1.
Now that she is aged out of the system, Robin Lee Mathers has strong opinions about her time in care of Wet'suwet'en Family Services.
they're not in it because they care about the kids. They're in it just for a check. That's what it seems like. It always seemed like that.
And the role she feels the First Nations Child Welfare Agency played in the deaths of her 3 sisters.
You know, they didn't send a counselor or anything to Sasha. They let Naya leave foster care too early. You know, they weren't checking up on her or anything. As for Arizona, she grew up feeling angry against Weechie.
Robin and her sisters Arizona, Shania, and Sasha Bob were all in the care of Wet'suwet'en for most of their lives, under what's known as customary care agreements. A seemingly holistic approach to child welfare meant to keep Indigenous children connected to their family, culture, and community. Only that's not what's happening. Of all the deaths of Indigenous children in care in Ontario, more than half happened under First Nations child welfare agencies. And nearly all of the cases that APTN has reported on over the last few years were under customary care agreements.
I felt alone. And I always wondered where the heck they were. Like, what happened to them?
Well, you know, that's going to be an important one. The Death Report Part 1 airs tomorrow night following the APTN National News. Time now for one more quick break. Coming up, an online miracle. Mucklucks found.
Got a message from a friend of the family who had said you should try and reach this this woman, this seller, because there's something from the resource center.
Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. This is what the sunrise looks like from the Diavik diamond mine located near the border of the NWT in Nunavut. Robin Labeline tells us there has been little to no sunshine for weeks. Sun looks good there. Keep those great pictures coming. You can send your photos to share@aptn.ca, and your photo might be our next photo of the day. Well, let's see if there's any sun coming up. Let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 10 above in St. John's, 6 for Halifax, -5 and sunny skies in Nain, 1 below for Cartwright. +4 with snow in Montreal, 3 below and snow in Chibougamau. +2 with snow for Toronto, 0 and flurries in Sault Ste. Marie. -1 with snow for Thunder Bay, 7 below in Sioux Lookout. -13 in Churchill, 9 below with flurries in God's Lake. -1 in Winnipeg, Gimli, and Dauphin. +2 for Regina, 1 above, and sunny in Saskatoon. -5 with snow in Uranium City and Stony Rapids. Over in northern Alberta, +2 and snow in Fort Chip, +5 in Fort McMurray. 2 above for Medicine Hat, +12 and sunny in Calgary and Lethbridge. 8 in Vancouver and Victoria, 0 for Kamloops. +1 in Fort Nelson, +4 in Smithers with snow. -7 in Old Crow, 4 below with a rain-snow mix in Whitehorse. -5 and showers for Yellowknife, 9 below with snow in Norman Wells. Snow and -12 for Sax Harbor, 19 below in Inuvik. -8 in Chesterfield, 6 below in Cambridge Bay. -17 with snow in Resolute, snow and 6 below in Joe Haven. It's been more than 5 years since the Métis Resource Centre shut its doors in Winnipeg. But this month, a piece of its history popped up on social media after a pair of mucklucks donated to the centre appeared on Facebook Marketplace. As Brittany Hobson shows us, this has captured the attention of one member of the centre's founding families and started the search to bring these items home.
It's like they were lost for a while.
For Jake Freeman, finding these traditional mucklucks online was a miracle. That's because these artifacts once belonged to the Métis Resource Centre in Winnipeg and are one of the many pieces that went missing after the centre shut its door in 2014. Until earlier this month, when a friend reached out to Freeman to say they saw the mucklucks online.
Got a message from a friend of the family who had said, you should try and reach this this woman, this seller, because there's something from the resource center. So I then reached out to the woman who was selling them to see if I could try to get them back.
Freeman purchased the mucklucks earlier this month. She says the seller had purchased them off of Facebook Marketplace and were delivered in a box labeled the Métis Resource Centre, along with a pair of leg wraps. Freeman is the daughter of the centre's co-founder, Lorraine Freeman. Her mother started the centre in 1999. Over the years, artifacts such as moccasins, birch bark baskets, books, or these mucklucks were donated. Lorraine passed away in 2005, and at the time, Freeman didn't have much involvement with the centre. She later learned all the artifacts from the centre went missing. Being reunited with the mucklucks has been an emotional experience.
I'd like to think that they're maybe still on a journey as well, and that for whatever reason, finding them online and reaching out and being able to reconnect with them, to me, must mean something. Maybe don't know what that is yet.
Kevin Haig is a former board member of the centre. He says the discovery of the mucklucks and leg wraps was like a kick to the stomach.
Because this stuff is missing, there's a lot of stuff that we can't pass down to people now, and that it's missing. Like it's a missing part of the puzzle again. And it took many years to put that stuff together, and many years of people sitting on the fence of whether they wanted to donate that to the resource center or not.
Both Haig and Freeman would like to see the artifacts returned to the original owners or put on display for educational purposes. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Quite a story. Well, you know, this week and next week, APTN News and Current Affairs is looking at the child welfare system, and so is Nation to Nation. Here's Todd Lamoran with a preview.
We'll be focusing on the northern Ontario city of Kenora, where the human wreckage caused by the child welfare system is seen on the streets. Nation to Nation producer Kenneth Jackson will show us those streets, where people must deal with homelessness, drug abuse, and racism. As well, I speak to a survivor of that system. He now tries to help people struggling themselves. And I talk to a psychiatrist who practices in Kenora. He sees a direct connection between people being caught up in child welfare and those mean streets. I'm Todd Lamoran, and I'll see you in just a few minutes.
That is your APTN National News for this Thursday. For the very latest, visit our website, aptnnews.ca, and never miss a headline by downloading the APTN News app. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. Stick around. Todd and Nation to Nation are next. We'll see you back here tomorrow.